Well, what can we really say about this? Um, we knew there were going to be problems down in Kent. We always said there were going to be problems down in Kent. It is one of the busiest ports in the UK. Now, I've said plenty of times before, it's not just the port in Kent that is going to be having some of these problems potentially in the future. I've talked, of course, of the problems about Hull and the problems that that could create if that starts to get jammed up in the past. I still worry and think that that could happen, and is potentially certainly a problem. It hasn't happened yet. It has caused some queues, but not on the level that obviously we've seen down in Kent, especially down on the M20 and M2. So these queues go back for miles and are causing huge delays. It is causing fresh food to basically rot in lorries and not be able to get to their destination. Now, why has this happened? Well, Boris Johnson's Brexit deal, the very deal that he said was absolutely fantastic, that was amazing, that was oven ready, that we could just put it into place and it would be all be ready to go just like that. Job's done. Brexit's done, dusted, all over. And again, Johnson made the claim that this would make trade frictionless. But of course, Johnson's Brexit deal ended frictionless trade because why? We were in the customs union, we were in the single market, and we were in the EU, which pretty much guaranteed we didn't need to do customs checks because we all used the same regulations and rules. And of course, this has caused massive problems. And trust me, if you've seen the title of the video, we haven't got to the worst part yet. But before we do go into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link where you can, buy me coffee and, help support the channel that way. And of course, down below, there are the YouTube subscription button as well. And of course, the YouTube thank you button as well. So thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. So what has happened? What has happened to make this even worse? Well, by the fact that the government has basically just buried their head in the sand over this. They're just refusing to admit that this is a problem. The only news you will be hearing about this, very often, if it appears sometimes on the news, but it's not really seen as this massive problem. It is a massive problem, but especially for the people in Kent, it's going to become an even bigger problem. Why? Kent County Council did a disaster check, shall we say, based on this, and they have said that now 50 days out of a year, so think about this, 50 days out of a full year, there are going to be severe disruptions and even blockages and problems of the flow of traffic into Dover, which again has huge implications for other traffic and jamming up all kinds of road networks, you name it, all in and around that area. And that area is very, very, very busy. As we've said before, it is one of the busiest ports in the country. And it is set to get even more busier because guess what? It's coming up to summertime. People are wanting to travel. One of the, again, popular destinations down there, well, we'll just pop over to France for the day. That's going to get quite interesting. As I've said before, I think expect, shall we say, the booze cruises, something we probably haven't seen since the 90s, or at least that term back from the 90s, maybe come back into fashion again, which will be certainly interesting to see. But of course, this is where the embarrassment comes in. Why? Well, these truckers that get stuck in this queue, they get stuck in this queue for days. Some have been stuck in the queue for weeks that we've heard. And they have no food, no access to, facilities or anything like that. And we've heard constant stories of, truckers having to relieve themselves on the side of the road. And literally that Kent is becoming the toilet of the UK. It is becoming such a problem. Now, of course, we didn't have this problem, of course, when we were in the EU or even still in the single market and customs union. And this is part of why the government wants to deny that this is even happening, that this is a thing, because again, this just wasn't an issue, back when we were in the EU. But it's become such a problem now that since the government refuses to act and acknowledge that it is a problem, or even attempt to try and solve this problem, it's been left up to the local council. And the local council has had to reach out to a emergency disaster relief foundation, one called REACT. And REACT has basically specialities set up for combating like earthquake relief, tsunami relief. They've even helped out with refugees, from Ukraine. That's their speciality. That's what they, specialize in. But now, all of a sudden, here we are having Kent County Council having to bring in a disaster relief charity to help solve out this problem, because it is going to only get worse. Just as we predicted back in 2016, I've been predicting ever since, this is going to cause a problem. But of course, the Brexiteers at that time made ridiculous claims. They said, oh, don't worry, we're going to leave the EU politically, but stay in the single market and customs union. Or don't worry, we would still get this amazing sweetheart deal where we would somehow remain in the single market and customs union, but wouldn't have to follow all its rules and regulations. Again, it was just complete and utter fantasies that the Brexiteers portrayed and put out to the public to try and swing as many people over to their side as they possibly could. And this is why we are now seeing a lot of people start to say, this wasn't a good idea. And sooner or later, people will, especially in Westminster and Parliament, people will start to stand up and say about, these are our problems. How are we going to solve these problems? Well, one of them, pretty much all the problems we are facing are literally caused by the fact that we have left the EU and we've left the single market. We've left the customs union. These are massive problems that we are having to face, not only just down south in Kent, but businesses across the country are now having to face huge problems. They are either we'll either pick up a warehouse and just move it over to Europe somewhere, or we'll just stop trading with Europe altogether because it's just not worth the hassle anymore. And then you've got obviously the situation in Northern Ireland, which, as we've said before, there's a lot of people whenever I bring this up saying the EU wouldn't allow you back into this, to which I always say, well, why wouldn't they allow us back into this? Because it solves the massive headache that is the Northern Ireland problem as well. They'd be more than happy to let us back in. There is no one in the EU Parliament who is saying, well, not let the UK back in. Who is saying that in the EU Parliament? There's no one, because even they recognize, well, if we let the UK back into the single market and customs union, solves a lot of the problems. And look, we would be very, very happy and start following those rules and regulations, because they were never a problem. Politically, they were never a problem. It was just the Brexiteers who liked to, talk them up as if they were a problem when they really weren't. So ultimately, this is just hugely embarrassing, and it especially is embarrassing for this government who claimed that Brexit was not a problem. This was all going to be easy. And now look at it. The local Kent County Council is having to bring in a disaster relief charity to help solve a problem that Brexit has created. And it ain't going away. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all very soon again.